think I have finally figured out and got my audio back to what it once was. So let me know how this audio sounds. I think it's been my last 2 or 3 videos that have been a little different audio-wise, so my hope is that we are back in business, so let me know, please. Today's video is going to be about a child murderer. Now, it's been a hot second since we've talked about a child that would go to such a horrific length to be a murderer. And I came across this case recently and I just really wanted to cover it. So today we're going to be talking about Japan's youngest killer. Before we jump into the actual case, let's get our housekeeping out of the way. First, if you've been around a while, you probably know that I always put, well, not always, but most of the time, I put a pinned comment with 3 cases that I am interested in covering, and I do that so you can vote and tell me which one sounds the most interesting so I can focus on that first. So please check out that comment and let me know what your vote is. Housekeeping number 2. If you are not subscribed, I would greatly appreciate if you considered doing so. And then number 3, this is a new housekeeping, and this is something new that I am going to incorporate, I think, going forward. So, if you watched my last video, which was on Ed and Lorraine Warren, I slipped in a hidden gem in my video. The hidden gem is something I'm gonna slip in my videos going forward, and the hidden gem may be a specific fact about the case I'm covering, or it might be a fun fact about myself personally. It's gonna vary, but I will tell you in the video that what I am sharing in that moment is the hidden gem. And you might be asking, why are you doing this? Or what is the purpose of the hidden gem? I am so glad you asked. What I am thinking is if I get 10 or like 15, I haven't settled on a number yet, but a certain number of hidden gem comments, then I will give you an extra video that week or month. So, for example, in general, I try to put out 2 videos a week. If I get enough hidden gem comments on each video that I were to post, let's see, so that's 4 weeks a month at 2 videos, so we're looking at 8 videos in a month. Technically, that would mean that the following month you would get double that. You would get 16 videos from me. You get what I'm saying? Do you get that math? That is the goal here. So, if you like the idea of getting more videos from me, let's help each other out, help a sister out, and comment down below when you hear me throw out that hidden gem. You got it, capiche? Alright, cool. So, now that we've done our housekeeping, let's talk about this killer in Japan. Tuesday, June 1st of 2004 at Okubo Elementary School in Sasebo, Nagasaki, Japan would be unlike any other before. At lunchtime that day, 11-year-old Natsumi Tsuji invited her classmate and friend, 12-year-old Satomi Mitari, into an empty classroom where she promised to show her a new game. Under the guise of walking her through how this fun game was supposed to be played, Natsumi would guide Satomi to a chair where she sat down and allowed Natsumi to remove her glasses and place them nearby. Satomi was told in that moment that she was going to die. But believe it or not, she wasn't bothered by this. And the reason for that is because Natsumi was known as a bit of a horror buff. And so Satomi just assumed that this was a part of whatever game Natsumi had in mind. Unfortunately, Satomi was a little too trusting in this situation. Natsumi would tell Satomi not to look and offered her a towel to cover her eyes with, but Satomi declined. Instead, Natsumi covered Satomi's eyes with one hand, and she pulled a box cutter out of her pocket with the other. Now, for the sake of not getting too gory and graphic here, I'm not going to specifically detail out what transpired, because I'm sure your imagination can do that for you. But what I will say is that with the use of that box cutter, Natsumi would injure Satomi in the throat region, and the way she injured her would leave her in a position where she was unable to speak. She lost control of her voice because her vocal cords were damaged, so she was not able to call for help. Next, Natsumi would also use that box cutter to inflict significant wounds throughout Satomi's body, which ultimately would cause her to succumb to those injuries from bleeding out to death. After this all transpired, Natsumi walked out of the classroom where this took place and made her way down a nearby staircase, and she was covered in Satomi's blood from the vicious attack. One student that happened to be in this same stairwell at the time that Natsumi was coming down it, the student realized that Natsumi was covered in blood, and so the student ends up taking a photo of Natsumi, which I think is kind of bold of that person to do. Obviously, that student probably didn't realize that Natsumi had just murdered a student in cold blood, but I'm not sure. My first idea would be to take a photo of this kid that's covered in blood, but that's just me personally. Now, the original photo would ultimately be seized by police once it all came to light what transpired. And the police warned anybody who might have a copy of this photo against sharing it or posting it on social media due to needing to protect the identity of Natsumi, given that she was a minor. However, it didn't stop someone from recreating the image and circulating it far and wide as if it were the original photo. Now, I will put a picture in the video of like the recreation photo. So this is not the original photo, but I am showing you the recreation photo. She is wearing a sweatshirt that says Nevada on it, and that is similar to the sweatshirt that Natsumi was wearing the day of the murder, but it's not the same sweater. It's just a copycat version of what somebody had reported they saw her wearing as she came down the stairs. Now, upon entering the classroom where Satomi was murdered, as you can only imagine, students were absolutely horrified by what they found, as well as the teacher. Now, during their lunchtime, which is, it sounds like this is when the murder transpired, the teacher had noticed that Natsumi and Satomi were both missing, but the teacher ended up going to look for the girls and quickly came across Natsumi. When she found Natsumi, she was already covered in blood, which you can imagine was a quite startling sight for this teacher. And Natsumi would tell her teacher that she had done something wrong as she cried. Now, by this time, it was already too late for Satomi. Tragically, the massive blood loss from her injuries resulted in heart failure before anybody could even call an ambulance to be brought to the school in an attempt to save her life. Now the question quickly became, what possessed such a young girl to do something like this to her friend? To everyone that knew her, Natsumi seemed like a fairly normal little girl. At least that's how they viewed her in the beginning. She played basketball on the school team and had an excessively high IQ for her age. She tested at about 140, which was an IQ held by only about 0.5% of the population. So this little girl was quite intelligent. At home, she enjoyed playing with her cats and watching movies, but at some point in that school year, a change in her routine seemed to have taken her down a dark path that nobody could have foreseen. There was a point in time where Natsumi's mother pulled her off of the basketball team because she felt as though Natsumi's grades were starting to suffer. Honestly, overall, it sounds like her grades had only started to slightly drop, but her mother had insisted that she needed to give up this extra activity until she was able to show improvement in her grades. Now, this really upset Natsumi because she loved to play basketball, and it became clear that she resented this decision her mother had made. But she had to go along with it, and so she spent a lot of time at home. And when she wasn't studying, she started to fill her time with scouring the internet. She would spend a lot of her time alone watching anime and manga. And she also started to develop a love for horror films. One film in particular that she developed an interest for was an adaptation of Battle Royale. The storyline centered around a group of students who were sent to a remote location where they must kill one another to survive. So very much like Hunger Games, but on a darker level. And Natsumi would become infatuated with the level of extreme violence that she saw on her screen. Natsumi would also discover an animated horror clip called The Red Room. The Red Room was a flash-based animation which very much so kept with the technology of that time. It was very much a creepy horror clip of sorts that Japanese horror genre is very good at achieving. The plot of this clip, The Red Room, involved a boy telling his friend about a room, about a website called The Red Room. The other boy is only vaguely interested, but when he gets home, he decides to check this out and kind of see what it's all about. However, when the boy does this internet search, he can't actually find the Red Room, and so he loses interest. He ends up staying on the internet though, however, and is just searching other sites and visiting some of his other favorite websites when suddenly a pop-up message appears, and it would read, quote, "Do you like me?" The boy would close the pop-up and just continue searching the internet, but then the message would reappear. "Do you like me?" Annoyed, the boy would shut it down, just like, what is this? Why does this keep popping up? But almost immediately this time, a new pop-up opens, and it said, "Do you like the Red Room?" Then pop-ups start opening and closing at random, each one telling a snippet of a story involving a knife-wielding killer. Finally, the pop-ups start listing names. The boy sees his friend's name there, and then his own. So at this point, the boy is very scared, and he tries to call his friend to ask him how to shut down this game. But his friend's phone would ring without being answered. And then there came a knock at the door. He would go to answer it, mystery killer. So that was the clip that Natsumi stumbled across during her time searching the web. And as absurd as that storyline may sound to you, side note, that is creepy to me, it had an incredibly big impact on Natsumi, and it began to take over her life. She became obsessed with the concept of the Red Room and started searching online for even more information about it. And that is how she would come across a chat room for fans of the story, which low-key could be kind of a sketchy place for an 11-year-old to be hanging out online. She would kind of hang out just to read people's posts, but it would then evolve to where she would reply to people's posts, and then eventually she would start a threads of her own in this chat room. It was through this that she was introduced to an extreme form of manga and anime, which focused heavily on gore and mutilation. And it was actually through all of Natsumi's investigating of these dark themes online that she would connect with her friend Satomi, because Satomi actually had some similar interests as her in this sense, and the two quickly would become friends. Now, there are a lot of children and adults who enjoy those type of films to an extent, who don't end up developing homicidal tendencies, right? I've seen a lot of young teenagers play some pretty violent and aggressive video games, but they don't turn out to be murderers, right? Like, we all know that. So investigators didn't feel like this could entirely be blamed for her terrible murderous actions. Initially, all of this seemed to cultivate the creative side of Natsumi, because after all of these things that she discovered, she ended up creating a website of her own where she would showcase her own horror animations, and ended up being fairly successful with it. She would quickly make herself known in this online community, and had quite a following. However, there would come a point in time before Satomi's murder that the two girls got in an argument, and it seemed as though this argument started when Satomi called Natsumi fat and pretentious, and made a claim that she was not as popular. When this transpired, Natsumi demanded that Satomi apologize to her, but Satomi refused to do so, and pretty much dismissed any feelings that Natsumi had about the situation, and just kind of brushed it under the rug and wouldn't acknowledge that her friend had her feelings hurt. Now, I don't think that Satomi had any idea about the level of rage that Natsumi felt over the insults, especially because this was somebody that she considered to be one of her best friends. Now, around this time, Natsumi's mother had allowed her to return to playing basketball, but Natsumi was very deep in her love of anime and manga and the very violent side of it. demeanor began to change. She would write in a diary excerpt that she did not even enjoy playing with her friends, and it was clear that outwardly she became more openly hostile to both her family and friends. She would lash out at her classmates. She would fairly regularly kind of get into altercations with boys. She would kick them and shove them against walls in the hallways at school, so Natsumi was very clearly acting out. And during all of this, she continued to work on that horror website of her own when she became very prominent in this online setting. She also developed an obsession with a TV series called Monday Mystery Theater, which would regularly feature people being murdered with box cutters or small knives. So, kind of a weird foreshadowing to an extent. On the day of Satomi's murder, her entire class would pose for an annual school photo out near the play structure. Both girls are seen holding up their 2 fingers up in a shape of a V, which to a lot of people you would say is like throwing up the peace sign. And they are smiling for the camera. So here is going to be the hidden gem of this video. The hidden gem is that the 2 girls are throwing up the peace sign in the photo taken of them with their classmates on the day of the murder. Now, nobody could have known what was going to happen shortly after this photo was taken on what seemed like a very typical school day. Now, once Satomi's body was found and Natsumi had told her teacher that she had done something wrong, police were immediately called to the scene, and Natsumi actually made no attempt to hide what she had done. She would end up confessing everything to police and told them that she had been planning this murder for days. There was a level of remorse and empathy that Natsumi would show to police. During her interviews with police, she spent a lot of time crying, and she was apologetic for her actions. She refused to eat when she spent the night at the police station, so it did seem like she had an emotional response to what happened to her friend. When investigators tried understanding what the motive for this was, the only thing that ever really came up was that she had killed her friend because she was angry over the comments Satomi had made about her not being as popular as her and calling her not very nice names. Now, Japanese law forbids the publication of a minor's name in situations like this. So, originally when this story came out, Natsumi was referred to as Girl A. But the story would circulate and she would then become known as Nevada Tan or Ton on the internet, and she was given this name because she was wearing a shirt that said Nevada on the day of the murder. And Tan or Ton, it's Japanese. But one night when a Japanese TV anchor or news anchor was showing some of her school drawings on air and talking about this murder case, he actually mistakenly mentions Natsumi Tsuji's name on air. So all of Japan quickly became aware of her real name. Because of the magnitude of this crime, a family court determined that Natsumi should be institutionalized. And so on September 15th of 2004, she was ordered into the care of a Tochigai Prefecture Reform School for 2 years. Now, when she was at this reform school, psychologists and psychiatrists would conduct a lot of tests to try and understand who she was and the way her brain operated, and to sort of diagnose her if possible. And ultimately they determined that Natsumi suffered from hikikomori syndrome, and people with this syndrome are known to isolate themselves. They don't want to leave their homes or interact with people on any level. And it was also speculated that perhaps she had Asperger's syndrome, which is on the autism spectrum, because she did struggle with her ability to socialize, communicate, and had a very obsessive nature to her. But neither of those potential diagnoses explained what would drive her to murder her best friend. On March 18th of 2005, the classmates of the two girls would graduate from primary school or elementary school, and were given a gift album with an extra blank page in it to honor Satomi, which is very kind. They were told that they could put photos of their own in the blank space, or add photos of Satomi, or draw in it. And Satomi's father would accept his daughter's certificates on her behalf, and at their graduation ceremony, a portrait of Satomi would sit in an empty chair. Although it wasn't actually handed out during the ceremony, Natsumi was also issued a certificate of completion in the event the day came when she was able to re-enter society and move on to secondary school. Because in order to continue her education at that point, she would need this certificate. But Natsumi would not return to society anytime soon. After her initial 2-year sentence in the reformatory, her sentence was extended for 2 more years to facilitate further psychological evaluation. On May 29th of 2008, Natsumi would finally be released from custody, but she would be placed on house arrest because both her psychiatrists and the Japanese court did not feel that she should, not be watched anymore, basically. They did feel that she had developed the necessary skills to peacefully exist in society, which is a good thing, but they wanted to keep an eye on her. And it would be 5 more years, at which time Natsumi was 20 years old, that she would fully be released from any punitive measures. And as soon as she was released and fully had her freedom, she and her family would move to an undisclosed location. Now, in the wake of her crime, she basically developed and obtained a cult following that creates drawings, animations, and memes dedicated to her when she was a young killer. Some of her fans would go to her previous home address and would make pilgrimages there to honor her. A German rock band named itself Nevada Tan, and there was another band that dedicated an album to her with the words, quote, "To her and all the little Japanese girls who murder people." And that is flipping sick to me. Like, there is nothing about that that is excusable in my opinion. Like, that is just a horrific thing to do, given all of what transpired. Today, Natsumi Tsuji lives a quiet life somewhere, and it's likely under a different name. I would imagine she keeps a low profile and doesn't want anybody dredging up anything from her terrible past. It doesn't sound like there's been anything that has reoccurred since then that would shine any kind of spotlights on her. At this time, at the time of recording, it is the year 2023. So Natsumi would be either 29 or 30 years old, if I'm not mistaken. And what she did was absolutely horrific. And my heart absolutely breaks for Satomi and her family. Nobody deserves to go through something that horrific. I very much hope that Natsumi, was technically reformed, I guess, during her time at this reformatory, and I hope that she was able to get the support mentally and emotionally that she needed to never do something even close to a crime like that again. So, that concludes the case of Japan's youngest killer, Natsumi Tsuji. Please, please, please let me know what you thought. And if you want more videos from me, don't forget to comment the hidden gem down below. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here with me